Well, good morning, everyone, and happy spring. I don't know if it's quite official yet, but we're close enough for me. This morning, I want to speak to you about a concept that's the cornerstone of Chinese Zen and Taoism, from which Chinese Zen essentially arose, along with the movement of Buddhism from the south. And this particular concept has a Chinese name. It doesn't really have an English name. Chinese name is Wu Wei. Wu, W-U-W-E-I. You should be able to see it on the screen. Literally, if we look at the word in Chinese, if we understand Chinese, that is, we would say that the word itself means not doing or non-doing. The practice of Wu Wei is not about not doing as much as it is about not efforting. So the doing referred to is not about not taking action, but it is about moving in harmony with the universe. Moving in rhythm with the breath, the heartbeat, if you will, of the universe itself. The term Wu Wei is derived from the Tao Te Ching, which is the central scripture in Taoism. Tao Te Ching, Tao means the way. And in our meditation this morning, I was referring to the way, the Tao, the breath, the one. In the West, when we think of the divine, or when we think of that which is of ultimate being, we tend to think of a being, a noun. We think of God as a noun. But the Tao is not a noun, it's a verb. We could think of God as a verb too. I usually do, but I don't think like most people do. Tao Te Ching, the Tao, the way, and its power. The power of the Tao. The way is sometimes related to, in Buddhism, to the word Dharma. Dharma has many different meanings. But Dharma can mean the way, the path, the practice, the journey. We take refuge in the Dharma, meaning we align ourselves with this way. W-A-Y, and also Wu Wei, W-E-I. So what is the Tao? Well, if we look at the Tao Te Ching, which is once again the sacred scripture, really the only original writing, the first words are the Tao that can be named is not the Tao. So, naming it, in English in particular, kills it. It's like trying to capture the river with a bucket of water. You say, this is the river, and point to the bucket. It's no longer the river. So it is with the Tao. We can point to it gently, but not specifically define it. But in relation to Buddhism, the practice of Wu Wei is very close to the practice of not self, anatta. In the vernacular of the Buddhist, not self doesn't mean there's nobody home. It means the self is not a noun, but a verb. The self is an activity. So non-doing can also be thought of as non-selfing, because the self is created moment by moment. Just pay attention to your sense of self, and it too rises and falls. Praise and blame, fame and shame, up and down, inflated, deflated, a good day, a bad day, good people, bad people, and on it goes. Wu Wei is flowing with the verb nature of the universe, of the divine. So it's really better to try to describe it in poetry, if we did try to describe it. So I'm going to read a passage from the Tao Te Ching. It says, "The Tao of heaven does not strive, and yet it overcomes. It does not speak, and yet it is always answered. It does not ask, yet it is always supplied with all of its needs. It seems totally at ease, and yet it follows a plan." So there's paradox, as we would think of it in our linear, objective view of the world. But it's not paradox if we think of it in terms of the universe as a verb, as a breath, as a movement. There's another poem that I'd like to read to you that describes the practitioner. And I've just had some work done on my eyes, so I'm hoping I can still read it. This one is called the Man of Dao. And that's the way I'll read it. You can think of it as the person of Dao, the woman of Dao, the being of Dao. The man in whom Tao acts without impediment harms no other being. Yet he does not label himself as being kind or gentle. The man, woman in whom Tao is with the man in whom Tao acts without impediment, goes his way without relying on others, and yet does not pride himself in walking alone. While he does not follow the crowd, he does not complain about those who do. Rank and reward make no special appeal to him. Disgrace and shame do not deter him. The ancients said, therefore, the man of Dao remains unknown. Perfect virtue produces nothing, no self, his true self. And the greatest man is nobody. The greatest woman is nobody. And again, think of nobody not in the sense of there's nothing there, but there is no buddy. there is no fixed self. I'll give one example that comes from my own memory in terms of the reference of how nature, when we look at nature, how it follows the Tao. You know, the changing of the seasons, birth and death, and all of the cycles through which nature moves. And we can see too, I think it's fairly easy to see nature not as a noun, but as a verb. Because nature is alive by its very nature. I remember one time being with my family years ago, taking a trail ride in the Rockies. And it was a lot of fun. However, there were some places where the path was extremely narrow, a bit rocky. On one side was basically a sheer rock. On the other side was nothing for about 3,000 feet. And sitting on the horse, I felt as if I was being suspended up in the air. And I realized that my entire physical life depended upon the horse and how well he or she could navigate that impossibly narrow path. I couldn't do it walking on 2 feet. I don't know how he did it walking on 4 feet. And so I talked to the owner after the ride was over and asked him about that, how the horses could be so attuned. And he says, yeah, he says, it's very interesting that one time he bought some horses and he didn't realize that they had at one time been used as police horses in a big city. And those horses would not walk that trail. They were afraid to walk that path. They got very spooked. And you don't want to be on a horse on a mountainside that's spooked. I've been there. And he said, yes, it was interesting. He says, once a horse starts working in the city where you've got cars and you've got horns honking and you've got sirens going off, the animal loses its natural connection with its ability to know exactly where and how to place its feet. That the horse dumbs down, so to speak. That's why often they put blinders on horses so horses get spooked very easily because they're prey animals. You know, they're if they don't pay attention, they could be eaten. So they're always very aware of their surroundings. And so I thought, well, does that happen to us? And he laughed and he says, oh, hell yeah. He says, talk to people that have lived here in this area for years and then have gone back to the city and lived, and vice versa. So our normal way of being is to not be in harmony with the Tao, the Wu Wei. So let's talk a little bit about how we can perhaps cultivate our ability to walk that path and to return to harmony, how to practice Wu Wei. So I've got another poem here. The ancient masters, their wisdom was unfathomable. There is no way to describe it. All we can do is to describe their appearance. They were as careful as someone crossing over an iced-over stream, alert as a warrior in enemy territory, courteous as a guest, fluid as melting ice, and shapeable as a block of wood, receptive as a valley, clear as a glass of water. And here's the how-to. Do you have the patience to wait until your mind settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving until the right action arises by itself? The master does not seek fulfillment, not seeking, not expecting. She is present. She is present in the moment and welcomes all things, is open to every experience. So practicing Wu Wei, practicing the harmony we're talking about here, is not about adopting a persona. It's so interesting in my work with people, one-on-one, coaching, counseling. Whenever I describe something like this, immediately the first question is, well, tell me how to do it. And, you know, they'll grab their notebook. A, B, C, D. The ego operates in a very linear, I call it a billiard ball universe, where one billiard ball hits the other one, hits the other one, hits the other one, that kind of cause and effect. But we're discovering the universe isn't constructed that way. The universe is holistic and beyond definition, beyond our descriptions. So, the obvious question that I would ask, and actually I did when I first was studying this, is that how in the heck can you live in the world and function this way? So I looked around to see if I could find anything in writing or anything in video as to somebody that does this. Of course, there are probably lots of people, but I want to share with you in closing this particular excerpt from an interview by Dara Brustein with Deepak Chopra. And she was interviewing him, and he was telling her about all of the projects that he was involved in. And it was it sounded like he was talking about 5 people. And this is what he was doing. And she says, you seem to have a really incredibly packed schedule. He says, how do you do all of this? And how do you keep your energy so vibrant? And his response was this: well, I don't identify with experience. I don't identify with my experience. It's just the way I am, or have been for many decades. I'm in the habit of observing the experience, letting it rise and fall in my awareness, knowing that the real me is not bound by this experience. I feel I do nothing at all, and everything happens. So it works for him. Will it work for you? I don't know. Give it a try. You can find out. Thank you for sharing your Dharma with us.